My name is Marissa Wade, 28 years old, a financial analyst in Columbus, Ohio. For 3 years, I poured every spare dollar into a dream, a sleek Tesla Model 3, my ticket to independence. It wasn't just a car, it was my hard-earned victory. Then my brother borrowed it. He said his old Honda was busted, swore he'd just drive to work and back. I trusted him against my better judgment. Hours later, my phone lit up with his panicked text. My Tesla was trashed in a Dublin parking lot surrounded by his buddies and empty energy drink cans. He didn't even apologize, just smirked and said, "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me." That smug look lit a fire in me. I'd spent years swallowing his messes, but this time was different. His words echoed as our parents tried to smooth things over like always. They pushed me to let it go, but I was done being the pushover. His smirk faded fast when he realized I wasn't backing down. What happened next changed our family forever. If you've ever dealt with a sibling who thinks they're untouchable, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about your own family drama. Let's see how many of you relate to this mess. Growing up in Columbus, my family looked perfect from the outside. To neighbors, we were the Wades, a tidy house, two working parents, and kids who seemed to have it together. But inside, it was a different story. My mom, Donna, a high school teacher, and my dad, Charles, a bank employee, poured their attention into my brother, Ethan, 24, who worked part-time at a retail store. I was 28, always pushing to prove myself, but Ethan, he could do no wrong in their eyes. When we were kids, Ethan had a knack for breaking things. I had this model rocket saved up for months to buy it. One afternoon, he borrowed it to show his friends. Came back in pieces. Mom just sighed. Boys will be boys. And Dad handed him a new video game to cheer him up. No apology, no consequences. Another time, I caught him using my first laptop, a clunky hand-me-down I used for school projects. He spilled soda on it, fried the keyboard. I was furious, but Mom said it's old anyway. Marissa let it go. Ethan just grinned and walked away. That was the pattern, his messes. My frustration, their excuses. It wasn't just stuff. Ethan got the bigger bedroom, the better birthday parties. When I aced a math test, Mom nodded. When Ethan passed a class, they threw a dinner. I felt like the odd one out, always working harder to be seen. Once I overheard Dad telling Ethan, "Don't worry about grades, you've got charm." Charm didn't fix my broken things or the sting of being overlooked. I tried talking to them. One evening, maybe 12 years old, I sat Mom down. "Why does Ethan get away with everything?" She patted my hand, said I was mature and should understand. Dad chimed in. "He's younger, Marissa. He needs more support." It felt like a script they'd rehearsed. Ethan overheard, smirked from the hallway, and I swallowed my anger. Again. School became my escape. I buried myself in books, aiming for straight A's. Ethan barely studied, coasted through with C's, and still got praise. In high school, I joined debate club, saved every penny from babysitting. Ethan spent his allowance on sneakers and never held a job longer than a summer. Mom and Dad covered his phone bills, his car insurance. I paid my own way, even for college applications. It wasn't fair, but complaining never changed anything. By the time I was in college, the gap widened. I was grinding through late-night study sessions while Ethan partied with friends. Mom would call asking me to check on him like I was his keeper. Once he crashed a friend's bike after borrowing it without asking. Dad bailed him out, no questions. I started to see the pattern wasn't just favoritism, it was enabling. Ethan learned he could skate through life, consequences be damned. That dynamic followed us into adulthood. Ethan still lived at home, working odd retail shifts, always figuring things out. I'd moved out, built a career, but family dinners were the same. Mom and Dad fussed over Ethan's stories, his half-baked plans, my promotions. A quick, "That's nice, Marissa." I stopped expecting fairness, focused on my goals instead. But deep down, the resentment simmered. Every time Ethan flashed that careless grin, it reminded me of all the times I'd been pushed aside. Looking back, I see how those years shaped me. I learned to rely on myself to fight for what mattered. But they also shaped Ethan into someone who thought he could take without giving back. That mindset, that smirk, would come back to haunt us all. While Ethan coasted through life, I threw myself into work. High school had taught me that relying on myself was the only way forward, so I set my sights on a finance degree at Ohio State right here in Columbus. College wasn't easy. I juggled classes, part-time jobs at a coffee shop, and late-night study sessions. Most weeks, I survived on instant noodles and 4 hours of sleep. But every A on an exam felt like a step toward something bigger, freedom from the shadow of my family's favoritism. After graduation, I landed a job as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm downtown. The pay was decent, but not glamorous. I lived in a small apartment, budgeted every penny, and skipped nights out to save. My goal was clear: a Tesla Model 3. It wasn't just about the car's sleek design or electric hum. It symbolized everything I'd worked for: independence, proof I could build something on my own. I spent 3 years stashing away bonuses, cutting corners, even skipping vacations. By the time I walked into the dealership, I felt unstoppable. The day I drove my Tesla home was electric, pun intended. I pulled into my parents' driveway, the car gleaming under the streetlights. Mom and Dad came out to see it. Mom smiled, said, "It's beautiful, Marissa, but a Honda would have been cheaper." Dad nodded, adding, "Practicality lasts longer than flash." Their words stung like they couldn't just celebrate my win. Ethan, though, was different. He circled the car, eyes narrow, muttering, "Must be nice to afford that." His tone wasn't admiration, it was envy, sharp and bitter. I brushed it off, too proud to let him dim my moment. Owning that car changed how I saw myself. Every time I slid into the driver's seat, I felt in control, like I'd carved out a piece of the world for me. I'd drive to work, the quiet hum of the Tesla drowning out the noise of my past. Colleagues noticed too. One coworker, a car buff, called it a statement piece. I laughed, but he was right. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was my declaration that I didn't need anyone's approval. Not Mom's, not Dad's, not Ethan's. Still, family dinners brought me back to earth. I'd mention a promotion, and Mom would say, "That's nice," before asking Ethan about his latest retail job. Dad would praise Ethan's potential, ignoring how he'd quit 3 jobs in a year. Ethan soaked it up, tossing smug glances my way. Once I shared how I'd hit a savings milestone. Ethan scoffed, "Why save so much? Just buy another fancy car." Mom chuckled like it was a joke. I bit my tongue, but his jab lingered. The Tesla became my sanctuary. On weekends, I'd take it for long drives through Columbus, windows down, music loud. It was my space, free from Ethan's carelessness or my parents' comparisons. I'd worked for every inch of that car, from the deposit to the final payment. It wasn't just metal and glass, it was years of discipline, of choosing myself over resentment. Ethan, though, never saw it that way. To him, my success was a challenge. At one family barbecue, he leaned against my car, joking to his friends about borrowing it for a spin. I shut that down fast, saying, "Not a chance, Ethan." His smirk faltered, but his eyes held that same envious glint. Mom overheard, said, "Don't be so hard on him, Marissa." Dad added, "Family shares, you know." I forced a smile, but inside I knew Ethan didn't just want a ride, he wanted to take what I'd built. That car wasn't just a purchase. It was my line in the sand. I'd spent years proving I could rise above the unfairness of our family. Ethan's jealousy only made me grip that achievement tighter. But I never imagined he'd cross that line in the worst way possible. One Sunday evening at my parents' house, Ethan approached me with a favor. The living room smelled of Mom's pot roast, and Dad was glued to a football game on TV. I was ready to head home, my Tesla parked outside, when Ethan sidled up, hands in his pockets. "Hey Marissa, can I borrow your car tomorrow?" he asked, voice casual, like he was asking for a pen. I froze. My Tesla wasn't just a car, it was my pride, my proof of years of hustle. Ethan knew that. "Why?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He shrugged, leaning against the kitchen counter. My Honda's acting up. Won't start. I need to get to work in the morning. His retail job was across town, and Columbus traffic without a car was a nightmare. It sounded reasonable, but something in his eyes, a flicker of nonchalance, set me on edge. I'd seen that look before, like when he'd borrowed my things as kids and returned them broken. I hesitated. Ethan, that's my car. I don't just lend it out. He rolled his eyes, letting out a dramatic sigh. Come on, it's one day. I'm not gonna mess it up. His confidence grated on me too smooth, too practiced. Before I could respond, Mom walked in, drying her hands on a dish towel. Marissa, what's the issue? It's just family helping family. Her tone was gentle, but it carried that familiar weight. Don't make a fuss. Dad muted the TV, turning to me. He needs to get to work, Marissa. You know how tough it is without a car. His voice was calm, but it felt like a command. I clenched my jaw, memories of Ethan's carelessness flashing through my mind, my ruined model rocket, my fried laptop. But Mom and Dad's expectant stares pressed harder. They'd always backed him, and saying no felt like picking a fight with all three. Fine, I said, voice tight. But there are rules. You drive to work and back. No detours, no friends in the car. And you return it by 6 p.m. clean and charged. Ethan nodded quickly, a grin spreading across his face. Yeah, no problem. But his tone was off, too flippant, like he was humoring me. His fingers tapped the counter, impatient, and he avoided my eyes when he said, "Thanks, sis." That word sis felt like a jab, not affection. It was the same tone he used when he knew he'd get his way. Mom smiled, patting my arm. See? That wasn't so hard. Dad unmuted the TV, already checked out. I wanted to argue, to say Ethan's promises were as reliable as a paper umbrella, but the weight of their approval pinned me down. I handed him the key fob, my stomach twisting. I'm serious, Ethan. Don't mess this up. He pocketed the fob, giving me a mock salute. Relax, Marissa. It's just a car. That casual dismissal hit like a slap. To him, my Tesla was just a toy, not the symbol of everything I'd built. As I drove home in my rental, because I wasn't about to leave myself stranded, I couldn't shake the unease. Ethan's grin, his too easy agreement, lingered in my mind. I texted him a reminder, work only. 6 p.m. sharp. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, nothing else. It felt like a brush-off. I parked, stared at my phone, and considered calling it off. But Mom's words echoed, family helps family. I'd given in, like always, hoping this time would be different. Deep down, I knew better. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a panicked message from Ethan. Marissa, something's wrong with the car. I'm in Dublin. Can you come? My heart sank. Dublin, Ohio was 20 minutes from Columbus, not on his route to work. I threw on clothes, grabbed my keys, and drove my rental to the address he sent, a parking lot outside a bar. My Tesla sat there, surrounded by a few gawking strangers. The sleek white exterior looked fine, but the dashboard was dark. No response when I tapped the key fob. Ethan stood nearby, hands stuffed in his jeans, next to his friend Tucker Ellis and a couple of other guys I didn't know. What happened? I demanded, voice sharp. Ethan scratched his neck, avoiding my eyes. I drove it here last night. Just a small get-together with Tucker and some friends. It stopped working when I tried to leave. My blood boiled. A get-together, not his retail job. He'd broken every rule I set, no detours, no friends return by 6. I glanced at Tucker, who shrugged, muttering, "Not my fault, man." Empty energy drink cans littered the ground near the car, and the air smelled faintly of spilled soda. I opened the driver's door, checking the console. The screen was blank, and a faint error message flickered, battery system fault. My stomach churned. Tesla's electronic systems were sensitive, overloading the battery or using a cheap charger could fry it. Ethan, did you plug it into some sketchy charger? I asked, barely containing my fury. He mumbled, "Maybe. I thought it'd be fine." His half-hearted admission hit like a slap. He hadn't just borrowed my car, he'd lied and treated it like a toy. I took a deep breath, forcing calm. A police officer approached, notepad in hand. "You the owner?" he asked. I nodded, explaining I'd lent the car to Ethan, who wasn't supposed to be here. The officer jotted notes saying the car would need a tow. I called my insurance voice steady as I gave details, but inside I was screaming. This wasn't just a car, it was years of sacrifice. My symbol of independence trashed because Ethan couldn't keep a promise. When the officer stepped away, I turned to Ethan. "You said work. You lied." My voice shook, but I kept it low. He shifted eyes on the ground. "It was just one night, Marissa. I didn't think it'd break. No apology, no remorse, just excuses." Tucker chimed in. "Chill, it's fixable, right?" I ignored him, focusing on Ethan. "You had one job: follow my rules. You couldn't even do that." He finally looked up, jaw tight. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," he said, voice defensive. That was it, the same careless attitude he'd always had now, wrecking something I'd poured my life into. The tow truck arrived, and I coordinated with the driver while Ethan and his friend stood back whispering. My insurance agent warned me the damage could cost thousands, especially if the battery was fried. I'd likely face a deductible and higher premiums, all because Ethan wanted a joyride. As the tow truck pulled my Tesla away, I felt a raw, burning betrayal. This wasn't just about the car, it was about trust, or the complete lack of it. Ethan had taken my biggest achievement and treated it like it meant nothing. I drove back to Columbus in silence, replaying his words, his shrug. My phone pinged with a text from Mom. "Ethan told us about the car." "Accidents happen, honey." I gripped the wheel, anger flaring. Accidents. This was no accident. It was Ethan's recklessness enabled by years of Mom and Dad's excuses. I didn't respond. I needed to face him to make him see what he'd done. That evening, I drove to my parents' house to confront Ethan. The familiar Columbus streetlights blurred past, but my mind was sharp, replaying the image of my Tesla's blank dashboard and Ethan's careless shrug. I pulled into their driveway, heart pounding, ready to lay out the truth. Inside, Mom was setting the table, Dad was reading the paper, and Ethan lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. The normalcy of it all made my anger surge. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, standing in the living room doorway. He barely looked up, muttering, "What now, Marissa?" I took a breath, keeping my voice steady. "You lied. You took my car to a party, not work. Now it's got a battery fault and I'm stuck with a tow bill and a fried system." Mom paused, her fork clinking against a plate. Dad lowered his paper, frowning. Ethan sat up, rolling his eyes. "It was an accident, okay? Cars break." "An accident?" I snapped. "You broke every rule I gave you. No friends, no detours back by 6. You didn't even apologize." Mom stepped in, her voice soft but firm. "Marissa, calm down. It's just a car. Things happen." Dad nodded, adding, "He didn't mean to damage it. You know how these new cars are complicated." Their words hit like a punch. My Tesla wasn't just a car, it was my achievement, and they were brushing it off like always. I turned to Ethan, waiting for some shred of accountability. Instead, he leaned back, smirking. "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me, Marissa. They always do." That smug grin, the same one from years of getting away with everything, made my blood boil. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to yell. "Not this time," I said, voice low. "You're paying for this. The deductible and insurance hike, $3,000. That's on you." Mom gasped. "3,000. Marissa, that's too much." "He's trying to get by." Dad shook his head, saying, "You can't expect him to come up with that. Be reasonable." Reasonable. I'd been reasonable my whole life, swallowing their favoritism, cleaning up Ethan's messes. I stood my ground. He broke my trust and my car. He pays, or I take this further. Ethan's smirk faded, but only slightly, like he still thought he'd skate by. Later, alone in the guest room, I checked my phone to distract myself. That's when I saw it, a notification from Twitter. Ethan had posted, "Some people can't let go of a stupid car. So stingy, LOL." My jaw dropped. He'd tagged me knowing I'd see it, mocking me for refusing to let his stunt slide. The word stingy stung, but it was the laughing emoji that pushed me over the edge. He wasn't just dodging responsibility, he was turning this into a public joke. My hand shook as I scrolled through replies, some from his friends like Tucker egging him on with likes and haha, so true. That post wasn't just a jab, it was a slap in the face, broadcasting his arrogance to the world. I stormed back to the living room, phone in hand. "You think this is funny, Ethan posting about me online calling me stingy?" I held up the screen showing the tweet. He shrugged, not even denying it. "Just venting, Marissa. Relax." Mom looked confused, asking, "What's this about a post?" I read it aloud, my voice steady despite the fury. Dad sighed, saying, "You're both adults. Don't make this a spectacle." A spectacle Ethan had already done, that dragging our fight onto social media for clout. I turned to Ethan, my resolve hardening. "You're not getting away with this. You owe me $3,000 and I'm not dropping it." He scoffed, leaning forward. "Good luck with that. Mom and Dad won't let you push me around." Mom touched my arm, pleading, "Marissa, we're family. Don't let this tear us apart." Dad added, "Forgive him, and we'll figure it out together." Their words were a familiar script, the same one they'd used since we were kids. But this time, I saw it clearly. They weren't protecting family, they were enabling Ethan's recklessness. I shook my head, stepping back. "No. I'm done letting him slide. He pays or I'll make sure he does." Ethan's eyes narrowed, his smirk gone, replaced by a flicker of unease. For the first time, he seemed to realize I wasn't backing down. I left the house, their voices fading behind me, Mom calling out, "Think about this, Marissa." But I'd thought enough. Ethan's tweet, his smugness, their excuses, they'd all pushed me past forgiveness. This wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about respect, accountability, and drawing a line I'd never dared to draw before. A few days later, I called my friend Sheila for advice. I was still reeling from Ethan's tweet and my parents' refusal to hold him accountable. Sitting in my apartment staring at the insurance paperwork, I felt trapped between anger and exhaustion. Sheila, who worked in the legal field, picked up on the first ring. "Marissa, you sound like you're about to explode," she said, her voice calm but direct. I poured out the story: Ethan's lie, the fried Tesla battery, the $3,000 bill, and his smug "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me" line. Sheila listened, then said, "He's not a kid anymore. You can take this to civil court. Make him pay." Court. The word felt heavy, but it sparked something in me. I'd spent years letting Ethan's recklessness slide, but this was different. My Tesla was my pride, and his actions, plus that mocking tweet, pushed me too far. Sheila explained I could file a small claims case for the damages, no lawyer needed. "Gather evidence," she said. "Anything showing he broke your agreement. Texts, police reports, even that social media post." Her confidence steadied me. Unlike Mom and Dad, Sheila didn't sugarcoat Ethan's behavior. She believed I deserved justice. I got to work. I pulled the police report from the Dublin incident detailing how Ethan took the car to a party, not work. My texts with him were clear: work only, 6 p.m. sharp. His thumbs-up reply, followed by his panicked message about the car, screamed dishonesty. I screenshotted his Twitter post, the one calling me stingy, with that Nunika family drama tag still racking up likes from his buddies. Then I called my insurance agent, who confirmed Ethan's unauthorized use violated my policy's terms, making him liable for the deductible and premium hike. The total was $201,000 for the deductible, $200 for the increased rates over the next year. Every piece of evidence tightened my resolve. I called Ethan, laying it out. "You owe me $3,200 for the car. Pay up or I'm taking you to court." He laughed short and sharp. "You're bluffing, Marissa. You won't sue your own brother." That word brother felt like a taunt, not family. I kept my voice firm. "I'm not bluffing. You broke my trust in my car. I have the police report, texts, everything. He went quiet, then muttered, "Whatever. Talk to Mom and Dad." He hung up like he could dodge this with their help. I drove to my parents' house that evening, evidence in hand. Mom was in the kitchen chopping vegetables, and Dad was watching the news. Ethan wasn't there, probably avoiding me. I sat them down, explaining the situation, Ethan's lie, the damages, the proof. "I'm giving him a chance to pay," I said. "If he doesn't, I'm filing a claim in small claims court." Mom's face fell. "Marissa, you can't sue family. It's too extreme." Dad shook his head, saying, "This isn't how we handle things. Work it out privately." Their words echoed every time they'd excused Ethan's messes from broken toys to now. "Privately," I said, voice rising. "He mocked me online, Mom. He lied, wrecked my car, and you're still defending him." I showed them the tweet, the police report, the texts. Mom looked away, murmuring, "He's young, he made a mistake." Dad added, "Lawsuits tear families apart, Marissa. Think about what you're doing." I felt the familiar weight of their disapproval, but this time I didn't budge. "I've thought about it," I said. "Ethan's 24, not a kid. He needs to face consequences." Sheila's words echoed in my mind. "You deserve justice." She hadn't coddled me or told me to forgive. She'd given me a path forward, one that felt right. I looked at Mom and Dad, their faces a mix of worry and frustration. "I'm not letting this go," I told them. "Ethan pays or I file by the end of the week." Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Please, Marissa," she said, "don't do this." But I was done being the one who always gave in. As I left, I felt a strange mix of fear and clarity. Taking Ethan to court wasn't just about the money, it was about breaking the cycle of excuses. I wasn't just fighting for my car. I was fighting for respect. A month later, everything had changed. I stood in a small claims courtroom in Columbus, Ohio, facing Ethan across a plain wooden table. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, reviewed my evidence, the police report from Dublin, my texts setting clear rules, Ethan's mocking tweet, and the insurance breakdown of $300 and $200 in damages. Sheila sat in the back, not as my advisor this time, but as a friend, watching the proceedings. Ethan slouched in his chair, had no lawyer, no real defense. He mumbled about the car breaking by accident, but the judge wasn't buying it. She ruled in my favor, ordering him to pay the full $300 and $200 deductible and increased premiums within 60 days. I expected relief, but as I left the courthouse, a hollow ache settled in. Winning didn't erase the betrayal. Ethan didn't even look at me as he stormed out, his face a mix of defiance and embarrassment. Sheila caught up with me outside, giving a quick nod. "You did what you had to," she said before heading to her car. Her presence was steady, but this wasn't about support, it was about witnessing the line I'd drawn. Back at my apartment, I waited for Ethan to take responsibility. He didn't. Instead, he doubled down, texting me, "You happy now? Marissa?" Dragging me to court. No apology, no offer to pay, just blame. I didn't respond. I'd spent years hoping he'd change, but his reliance on Mom and Dad's protection was unshakable. They called me the next day, their voices heavy with disappointment. "You took this too far," Mom said. "He's struggling." Dad added, "Family doesn't sue family." I held the phone, their words stinging, but I didn't waver. "He made his choice," I said. I made mine. The rift grew. Ethan moved back in with Mom and Dad leaning on them to cover his bills, including the court-ordered payment. They paid it, of course, just like they'd always bailed him out. But I saw it for what it was, enabling, not love. I stopped going to family dinners, tired of the sideways glances and Mom's pleas to move on. When Dad texted asking me to reconsider, I replied, "I need space." It hurt, but I meant it. Ethan's actions and their defense of him had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Cutting contact with Ethan was easier than I expected. His number went unanswered, his social media blocked. I didn't need his taunts or half-hearted excuses anymore. Keeping distance from Mom and Dad was harder. They weren't bad people just stuck in a pattern of favoring Ethan blind to how it tore us apart. I still loved them, but love didn't mean letting them guilt me into silence. My Tesla now repaired became my reminder I'd built something on my own and I could protect it even from family. The lesson wasn't easy. Setting boundaries hurt deeply, but it was necessary. I'd spent too long bending to keep the peace only to lose pieces of myself. Saying no, holding Ethan accountable, and stepping back from my parents' expectations gave me a clarity I hadn't known I needed. It wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect. I wasn't the stingy sister Ethan painted online. I was someone who'd worked hard, set limits, and refused to let those limits be trampled. Looking back, I don't regret it. The courtroom victory wasn't just about the money, it was proof I could stand up for myself. Ethan's still out there unchanged, leaning on mom and dad's support. But I'm free driving my Tesla through Columbus windows down, no longer carrying the weight of their excuses. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening. It's not easy to share something this personal, but I hope it resonates. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family? It's tough, messy, but sometimes it's the only way to protect yourself. Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear how you've navigated this. Let's talk about what it means to stand your ground.